Welcome back, folks, of our guest artist series. My name is Grace, and today I have the pleasure of having Norm Sham join us, one of the very familiar faces at Shakespeare's Hill, if you've been to our seasons. Thanks so much for joining, Norm. How are you this morning?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Norm's going to share with us his acting experience this morning, so let's just jump right into it. Norm, how do you approach a Shakespearean text differently as an actor than you would any other text?
I don't. I really don't approach it any differently. I mean, I approach any show that I do as sort of the first time I do it. I have experience and things like that, but when I'm breaking down a script or anything like that, I have to explain it to myself as if I'm a child, and I have to learn it like that. And then once I can explain it to a first grader, then I can embellish and play. I'm not a Shakespeare scholar. With every play, I take it as if I've never done it before and try to make sense of it. And Shakespeare's harder because it's a language to learn. So it's more difficult, but the approach is sort of the same for me.
Your first Shakespeare show then, has that process of trying to decipher Shakespeare for the first time, has that progressed at all?
No. I mean, basically there are certain words that I don't have to when I translate the script or things like that, because I have to write what it means right next to what it says, even if it looks like, well, that means that. I do have to write it for anybody to listen to. I still have to piece it together and make sense of it as a whole the same. So the same nerves and the same worry goes in.
I mean, honestly, though, that's reassuring to hear as someone who is, acting is not my forte. It's nice to hear that someone who hasn't studied Shakespeare for years on end can still go up there and perform it so wonderfully, because you do. So it's nice to hear that. It's not some impossible feat.
I mean, I sort of stumbled into it. My older brother did Shakespeare and liked Shakespeare, but, as an actor, I did a lot of musical theater, so I sort of stumbled into it. And my musical theater background sort of helped me, I think. It took away some of the fear in the presentation of it.
So going off of that then, how do you observe the audiences coming to Shakespeare in Delaware Park receiving the text, or how do they approach a show differently than, say, the musical theater crowds that you're more used to?
Well, some of the greatest parts about the park, other than being on stage on that hill, is, when you come in at first and you see on a beautiful day and you see the crowd sort of starting to fill in. And I like to get there really early and get whatever I need to get done with, and then relax for a half an hour even before the show even starts. But, going there and you see it, it's a beautiful day. It's oh, this is going to be fun tonight. And the smiles and all that. It's always great to see kids, teenagers, walking down the hill at the beginning and going for collection are some of the greatest moments. I see people that got engaged there and now have been, 40 years every year they've been celebrating. They come back every year. People that have brought their kids there that now they're bringing their kids, or they just had a baby. Like last year, I think somebody had a baby that was a teenager when they first saw it. And it's amazing. You never think things like that I just don't think about things like that. And then you're in the middle of it and you're talking to people, you go, wow, it's amazing how many people this can touch,
I couldn't agree more. It's, theater is always a community, but on the hill, it's always great, like you said, to see apprentices who come back and now are with their families, or who are oh my God, I remember my parents bringing me here when I was 5, and now I'm bringing my kids here. It's a really cool thing. And to, have Shakespeare in Delaware Park be one of the only Shakespeare companies in Buffalo is also a really cool thing. How do you think having Shakespeare a part of the Buffalo theater community has enhanced or influenced or...
Buffalo theater community? Well, I think, if you can have a company in town that dedicates itself to classics, a classic author, for this happened to be Shakespeare, it can only legitimize the town. I think to have a theater that anchors itself like that, it makes everything else sort of, even though we don't compete against each other because it's a summertime, but a lot of the same actors, work all year. But I think having an anchor like that in a theater town like this, which has evolved quite amazingly, to be around for 40 years, 45 years, is just, I think it legitimizes everything. A community, not just Buffalo, any community.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, and like you said, the Buffalo theater community as a whole has evolved so much, and it's such a great community, and it's strong, and there's so many theaters, and they're so They're so talented. So it's a pleasure to have Shakespeare be a part of that.
But back then Shakespeare, there was maybe 3 or 4 theaters, and Shakespeare was one of them. Troy, I don't know if the Cab might have been just coming around. Musical Fair wasn't around then. So it was BET, which is no longer around. There may have been 3 or 4, other than Studio Arena, 3 or 4 smaller theaters that, Shakespeare in the Park was one of them. And it's persevered, and now there are close to 20 theaters?
Let's take a walk down memory lane. Would you share with us, could you share with us either your favorite SDP role or your most vivid performance memory on Shakespeare Hill?
That's such a tough question. I have been one of the luckiest people because I've had so many great times on that stage. I've done, 9 shows, 8, 9 shows. They're all my favorite. I have memories, if I want to talk about, at the time that they're doing them, they're all my favorite. And if I had to talk to, about a particular show, I'm sure I could come up with great memories for each. Sounds obvious and trite, but my favorite is probably my first. Although, last year had a great fun, and it's the most vivid in my mind. So that's my most vivid memories. The first one, again, that was a bundle of nerves. It was Midsummer Night's Dream. I was one of the mechanicals, and I was welcomed into a group that was, Jerry Marr, Tim Newell, Todd Benson, Dave Hoffman, the late great Joe Natale, who is sort of responsible for me even doing this, because he's told me, you can do this. Don't be afraid. You can do this. So that was such a welcoming group, and that would probably be my most memorable because it's the first, and it was the one that started everything. Without that, I wouldn't have had the courage to do anything. The Tempest last year was a ball. I have a ball in a lot of these things, and I'm very lucky. But that one is sort of the one that started it all. So
absolutely. Well, we're lucky to have you. Thank you for coming back every time you do. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.